You're watching Unrendered on IKTV. I'm Tony Regisford, and my guest is Mr. Stephen Joachim. Stephen, we are moving quite nicely along. We're midway in our program, and something that's been in the news. We have the Ecuadorians who are here, and they're here rebuilding some bridges, some Bailey bridges, some permanent. And there have been some schools of thought that, one, they should not be paraded in uniform, but they are soldiers.
Yes.
I've heard it said, I've read it, for a matter of fact, that, you know, these people are here because the election season is coming, and of course, you know, they're here to make sure that Ralph Gonsalves maintains power. Maybe, I don't know, with the military might, perhaps. I don't know if that's his suggestion. What is your take on the way people are seeing this?
Again, it's all politics again. It never stops. It's either red or yellow, isn't it? The yellow people say,
but
these
it can't be
soldiers
lines
are here,
drawn.
But there are legitimate questions here, because first of all, Bailey bridges do not take 8 months to build.
But they're not just Bailey bridges that they're building.
Thank you very much.
Right.
So there's also a question of people understanding what is really being done, because
I don't know
how many Bailey bridges are being built versus permanent.
But I don't think there's a lack of transparency here. There's the whole program is
fair
in the
enough.
news.
That's fair enough. Well then, and I think the legitimate point is, guys, you don't need to wear you don't really need to wear your uniforms. If
but
it's
would
a
we have said
matter.
the same thing if American soldiers were here?
No, because there isn't a perception of an Alba situation and our links to Venezuela.
So
people who are not exactly what you would call
but see,
paragons of virtue and democracy.
Certainly, that is a sort of xenophobic mentality.
Well, yeah,
which we must move away from.
Yeah, I understand that, but except you're still missing the reality of politics, and you're still missing the reality that after nearly 15 years out of office, the NDP wants to get elected at all costs.
But this is at all costs. I mean, this is certainly scraping the bottom of the barrel, Stephen.
Well, that is your view, clearly. Clearly, my NDP friends disagree with you severely, and they think, God, it's a year to go before elections. You got 48 soldiers walking up and down here. It takes 3 weeks to put up a Bailey bridge. What are they doing?
They're here to fight the revolution for the comrade, right?
Well,
another Grenada situation, and the NDP is going to win, and they're going to stop it. They're going to take the ballot boxes,
or intimidate the ballot, or intimidate people from
stand up
voting
at polling stations, and I mean, can we be peddling this rubbish, Stephen? Really?
Well, of course.
Because I call it rubbish.
Well, you're entitled to your view, my friend. But there are ways to deal with that rubbish by simply taking them out of their uniforms. It's not an issue.
Why? Why won't you take the Americans out of their uniforms?
Because there is a different perception as to American soldiers versus Ecuadorian soldiers. It's a perception.
But and again, if you're in politics, that because we're going to be.
How are we going to move away from that?
Well, we're stuck in that mindset, which we have to somehow.
And you think it's going to change?
It must.
How?
By exactly what's happening now.
You've got 2 radio stations out there. I keep saying this, right? Because the radio stations have fundamentally changed what used to be politics. Politics used to be would slam and cuss each other for 6 weeks before the election, and we moved on.
You should change it, because I'm sure you think differently.
No, I do think differently, and I continue to argue with both of them. I will never be invited on Nice Radio. Never have I once been invited on Nice Radio. Never have I once been invited on Star Radio. They wouldn't. The only person who would have me on his radio show is Kingsley, because he says, you know, you're fair-minded, you're independent, you'll people what you think. I don't dare go. My friend Dougie would never, has never in 11 or 12 years invited me on Nice Radio. My friend Julian Francis has never and will never invite me on Star Radio, because you are preaching to your base. Your job as a radio station is to rabble-rouse and keep your 45% of the base in line to vote for me no matter what, so that I can gain or stay in power. That's what it's about. So how is it going to change, Tony? When you have those 2 radio stations out there continuously slamming, unless we have a total economic meltdown, that is the only way we change. When there's some massive crisis that hits us, and you say, oh my God, what we're doing is wrong, it can't work. But as long as it works for 45 or 50% of the people, as long as it continues to work, Tony, we're not going to change. You're becoming like my friend Chester now, a dreamer. What's wrong with you?
Well, you have to dream.
You have to dream. But I still say
change is only brought about by dreaming.
Take them out of the thing. It doesn't matter. What difference does it make? The bridges will still get built whether they're wearing a uniform or whether they're wearing regular clothes.
We're going to defend this one.
We will. There's nothing wrong with it.
Because if the same views were held, if the American soldiers were building the bridges, then I would say, okay, fine. We're genuinely we're genuinely opposed to foreign soldiers being here. But it's
We are not.
that.
We are not. I agree with you on that. We are not.
We embrace our old colonial masters.
Correct.
And the other people who look a little bit like us.
Excuse me a second,
whatever.
since you have to bring up the whole issue of colonial soldiers here.
Yeah.
This whole independence thing is a bunch of rubbish.
Well, of course.
You tell me which.
You tell me
which country is in. How many of these quote unquote independent small nation states are doing better than those who are currently colonies? Go and look at Martinique. Go and look at. Go and tell me where the independence is. Independence only matters to the 5 or 10 people at the top in politics.
Yeah.
Independence for the rest of us means
Steve,
absolutely nothing.
You can
look at our standard of living. I can.
That we should go back
absolutely. I argued a long time ago. I argued we should become a colony of Canada, in my view. I argued that a long time ago. Take a flight over to Martinique. Take a flight over to Guadeloupe. Go to Anguilla. You tell me, for the regular man on the road, if we are any better off.
Yes.
In fact, we are significantly worse off had we not stayed a colony.
Stephen,
that is my view.
This is a question of one's philosophy.
Yeah.
It's a question of one's philosophy. That's for another.
That's for another show.
That's definitely for another show because you're going to take me down
all kinds of routes.
All kinds of routes. Okay, and I can tell you that
I'll come back to argue this one any day with any of you. Where is independence better for us?
I can tell you. I
can standard
definitely disagree with you on that one.
We will argue.
Okay. Let's go into the economy and let's particularly look at tourism because we know that tourism is at the top level, especially with the onset of the airport and so on. What's our state of readiness? What recommendations would you make? You're in this business.
I'm in the business.
Closely associated with a successful,
very successful
outfit.
Yes.
And maybe we'd like to hear from you in terms of how do you think St. Vincent can ready itself for the access, the increased access that we potentially can have?
You know, once again, we're really going about the airport now. And as I told you, in my view, the time for criticizing or slamming the airport is way past. The reality is, regardless of who is there, it looks like it's getting done. Credit must be given for getting it done. And the question is, how do we make the most of it to benefit the country now going forward? It's too late now for some of the stupidity going on. Because as you know, I opposed the airport 7 or 8 years ago. The vast majority of people in this country support the airport and want the airport. There's a democracy. Leave it alone, Stephen. Let's move on. But you look at tourism now. We have real issues here. Where are we different? What is it we're going to offer? My friend Sess Mackey at a meeting the other day, National Sports Council tripartite meeting, says, you know, we want sports tourism. And I said, Sess, that's wonderful, except where are our facilities other than cricket, sir? You know? So it's all well and good to invest, and I understand the chicken and egg syndrome. I understand that clearly, right? So you have to give the benefit of the doubt. But how are you going to get people to come to St. Vincent? What are we coming for? Yes, we have a beautiful country. It is not the most beautiful country in the world, except for those of us who live here and think so. But it is, you know, most people are not going to think so. Most of us think our homeland, wherever that happens to be, St. Lucia, Dominica, Grenada, St. Kitts, we think that's the most beautiful place in the world. So what do we do? How do we get people here? Now, one of the arguments that I have made for a long time is we need to start by fixing certain things. And one of the first things we must fix and attract is to attract back Vincentians who are living overseas. Our famous diaspora, a term I hate, but nevertheless, there are so many Vincentians. And you know why they're afraid to come home? Terrified because of our poor healthcare system, our very poor primary healthcare system.
You're talking about people who get into the stage of retirement.
I'm talking about people who are in retirement, Vincentians who've lived overseas 30 or 40 years and want to come home.
Yes.
But they are afraid. Okay?
Because
justifiably or not, because of the healthcare system. And the healthcare system is really, again, about the people. Huh? It's not really about the facilities. It's about nurses being nice to you. It's about being able to ask your doctor a question and feel that you'll get a proper answer and not feel like you're a moron and being slammed for daring to ask a question. That's an easy market, I would think. But we haven't done a good enough job in healthcare. And I know we've made some progress in many areas, but we're still nowhere near good enough. And I understand it is very difficult in a country of 100,000, maybe 40,000 taxpayers,
the competition
20,000
the different sectors. What
do
you
money
do with
and
the
whatever.
limited money?
I understand that. But then again, so how are you going to attract people? You know, one of the things why I didn't think we needed an international airport is I think we needed to go. We're never going to be a destination of mass tourism. We're not going to be a Barbados
and
or
maybe we
St. Lucia. And I don't think we should either.
Okay.
I think Sir James Mitchell was right on that one. You know, and we are never going to be. The last time I tried to go to Trinity Falls, I couldn't get there. I had to walk 45 minutes. I don't know if it's been fixed. But we need to fix facilities. Those areas that are beautiful, we need to fix.
Balance, because, I mean, you can look at not mass, but a larger scale of tourism.
But there are things we could have done very easily. Look at the state of Kingston for cruise ships coming in and so on too, Tony. This is not hard to do. You know, Tongue Board should tell every property owner in Kingston should be told, you must paint your building and make it look decent every 2 or 3 years. And if you're not going to do that, we'll do it for you and you will pay. Because the place is disgusting. Some of the buildings in town are disgusting. I walk down the road every day, walking from where I park my car up where Carib Cable used to be down to where our offices are, and it stinks. Why? Because we have a restaurant there and they're pouring crap into the gutters and not washing it down thoroughly with water or whatever. So unless you get a heavy set of rain, the place stinks.
So essentially,
we're not even doing the little basics right now. Right. If we don't start to fix that.
That's not necessarily an indictment on that, on whatever administration there is. This is an indictment on the people themselves.
But it's also an indictment on the people who are charged with managing certain part. Our Tongue Board, for example, needs to be stronger. You know, I'm not here to criticize anybody individually. I don't know the people on the Tongue Board. But whoever it is should tell people, you can't do this. You're hurting our country. Because when one person comes off a cruise ship and smells the stench and turns around and walks back, they're going to tell 100 people at home about, you know what I remember about St. Vincent? It stunk.
Right.
We're not doing, we need to fix the little things.
So the cleanup campaign that is, or the money, whatever money is going to be spent over the next short period of time
will make no difference.
To get Kingston
will make
going.
No difference unless we put in fundamental changes,
so
which says if you don't paint your building,
that's sustainable.
Yeah, correct. And if you don't paint your building, we'll do it for you. Sometimes people accuse my friend Ralph of being, and send them the bill. You will do it. Yes. Right? You will do it.
But you realize, of course, if
we'll be accused of socialism.
If the Prime Minister did that, especially this Prime Minister.
Yeah, he's a communist and all kind of stupidness. I understand that too, but you know, sometimes I think there is a role for more dictatorial approaches to certain things. You know, certain countries did pretty well on the beneficial or you know, let me leave that one alone. But you know what I'm saying? Sometimes there is a role for people to say more, we need to do better, we must do better, and you will do this or else there's a consequence because you are hurting the country. I'll give you a prime example. They're talking tourism. You go to Beckway. You know, I have a little boat, I go to Beckway. You know, there's a beautiful beach in Beckway called Princess Margaret Beach. I believe you may be vaguely familiar with it.
Very familiar.
Magnificent beach. One of the best places in the world in my view. You know, all over. And you know what, I'm now 52 years old, and for the 48 years of my memory, nothing has changed in Princess Margaret Beach. You want to accuse Ralph of being a communist. Do you know something? What he should do, in my view, he should go to the people and acquire the land and say, you haven't done anything with it. Our country needs to be developed. You are not invested in my country. I can create a magnificent 200-room resort employing 1,000 essentials.
Going to come back on a program like this and uphold and support that decision? Absolutely. Or are you going to come back and call Dr. Gonzalez a dictator?
But why? Of course, but there is a room for some dictatorship here. Look at this. You have a beautiful beach, owned, I presume, by private people who are doing nothing with it. You're not adding to the value. You know, I was discussing with a friend of mine the other day, a lawyer. The amount of, I went to the High Court the other day for something, and the amount of lands that basically people are taking from other people under the possessory titles law. 12 years gone by, you haven't used the land. You know, some of us feel very horrid about this. But the guy said to me, the lawyer said, Stephen, you need to think about it this way. This land is sitting there, all right? It's land. It's not, I'm saying, it's not being used productively. How long do you want to, you might say 12 years is wrong. Should it be 20 years? Should it be 30 years? Yeah. But at some time, can you just let it sit there indefinitely forever with not being used productively to benefit the country?
On this issue, I can agree with you somewhat in terms of we have limited land, okay? And
we have limited beaches.
We have limited beaches. We have limited sites that can be utilized for the sake of the overall good of the country, right? And so you give the owner of the land leeway. Say, look, you know, you go
give
first.
you a time.
Give you a time. You do something with this because
you have a certain period to develop it or else.
Yeah, if you're holding the country at ransom.
But did that not just happen? It was a Canawana or Myra where the government took the land back because the person hadn't done anything
because that was a pre-arranged contract, though.
Right.
You bought the land under the understanding
that it would be developed.
It would be developed, and you reneged on that. But we're talking about where Stephen Joachim, who
wants Princess Margaret Beach, and he's doing nothing with it because he wants to keep it forever.
And nobody can force him to do anything with it.
Yeah.
And I think that's wrong.
Yeah.
I think that's wrong, and I think it also is wrong where people who are playing this game of Monopoly, they own Park Lane and Mayfair, and they're collecting all the rent, and then they just stack up more property and they leave it there. And I think that should be stopped as well. Yeah. So I agree with you on this. This maybe the one point in the program.
For the first time.
The first point in the program so far.
I do feel, I mean, the reality is we have limited white sand beaches in our country. If you want to develop tourism, you know, white people are not coming to the Caribbean to go on black sand beaches to board up the skin. I know some people disagree with me and say, oh, look at certain beaches.
What about the idea of looking at
Hawaii and whatever?
Other markets as well, other destinations. Not destinations, but places where we want to attract tourism. Because there's a whole paradigm shift going on in the world, Stephen.
But go ahead. Tell me about the paradigm shift. Because
maybe you should, the South-South relationships that may be...
I'm a little bit of... I went to Barcelona last year for Swimming World Championships, and a lot of people speak English there, and I was still a little bit intimidated because I didn't speak Spanish. So when you're saying that people from, we have direct flights from Venezuela, or had till a few months ago or whatever. How many Venezuelan tourists
the language is being a barrier?
Language is a barrier. It can be overcome. Don't get me wrong.
Well, of course, that's what I'm thinking. We need to put the systems in place to overcome it.
But where are we going to? Where are these tourists currently going, and how do you persuade them to come here? What can we do better or different?
That needs to be studied.
But that's my point. We're building an airport, and I don't see enough planning going into thinking about how are we going to use this airport best. To me, the argument should be about the NDP and the ULP should be arguing, not about who built the airport and who finished it or who will finish it, but who has the better ideas for using it to try and develop the country to the best of our ability.
Yes.
I have yet to hear anyone say that other than people just saying, oh, we'll build the airport and people will come. Well, guess what? I don't think it's going to happen. More airports have closed in the last 10 years in the world. More have closed than have opened. These are facts.
But of course, the Prime Minister can argue, and justifiably so too. Says, because he can't be every generation.
Correct.
So what he can't do.
Correct. And he's right.
Your children should do.
And he's right. And that is why I would like to hear from the NDP. What are we going to do? Instead of just slamming it or it'll never get finished. Okay, guys, it is getting done. Whether you like it or not, you go out there, you can't deny that there's been humongous amounts of progress. You can't deny it is getting done. So what is your plan for doing with it? If you get re-elected in the next election, and assume it's not completed, but it's 95% done, what are you going to do? Just let it sit there?
Do you think the NDP is kerfuffled on the whole aspect of the airport? Because it looms as a political feather in the cap of the ULP.
Absolutely.
And so they can't get around that and say, well, all right, this is what we will do with the airport.
Right.
Instead, they're stuck with, this is a bad project.
I don't think I've ever heard them say it's a bad project. What I've heard them say is that it is a project that we don't know how it's being financed, and we are concerned about how it's being paid for, and all those sorts of things. But my view, on the other hand, is that the reality is it's getting done, and you will inherit this if you get into power. So what are you going to do with it? I don't hear any discussion about that. I think the NDP never gave the country an alternative. It wasn't like the NDP ever came out against the airport, in my view, and said, here's what we feel, and here's why we should never have an airport, etc. or whatever.
I think there's been a mixed bag.
They've never had a clean message, and they still do not have a clean message on the airport. There is no clean message about where do we stand on the airport and on airport development.
I think some people oppose it more than others, some people support it more, within the ranks of the NDP.
Absolutely,
some support it more than others.
And clearly the ULP and Ralph sees this as a winner. This is why they're pushing it so hard. And I tell you something, I keep saying to everybody, if you go out there yourself, there's one feeling that you cannot hide. No matter if you're Stephen Joachim and you think the airport is a terrible idea, you go out there and you see it being built, you know what you feel, Tony? You feel pride.
Right.
You feel good that we have accomplished something that a little 2x4 rock in the middle of the ocean was able to do a project like this.
So it's a model
project.
think
where the ULP went really wrong is how long it would take to build the airport. I think they made false promises or didn't understand what would really be involved.
You thought they're bringing unnecessary pressure on themselves.
On themselves. They
say, well, yes, we're promising,
I told you, I think
we're promising to live at this airport within a certain time frame.
Yeah, correct. I was in London a few months ago, and there's a big debate in London about putting an extra runway at Heathrow at Gatwick. And the Gatwick people said, listen, in 10 years, if you agree to this now, we could put the runway here now. 10 years. We are trying to do something here in the space of 4 or 5 years. Unnecessary pressure, in my view. Because you know what? It's going to take 10 years. If we finish in 8, great. then there's no issue anymore. There's no pressure.
Well,
because it is getting done. And to me, we're trying to blame somebody because it didn't get done when they said it would.
I'm agreeing with you partially on the second point for this program, Stephen. In that I'm saying that the finishing date, I feel at this point, is not relevant.
It's irrelevant. I agree with you.
I really don't think it's
whether
relevant.
Whether it's June next year or June the following year. I agree with you. But the reality is it is getting done, and we need to figure out what we're going to do.
Stephen, we must push on. Sports.
Yes,
because
my passion.
I know that's your passion,
my passion,
right?
yes,
and your daughter again has just performed fairly well. Extremely well. So
thank you.
So we're at the end of this segment,
yes,
right? And when we come back, we'll pick it up.
Great.
At that very point.
Thank you, sir.
This is Unrendered. My guest is Mr. Stephen Joachim. More when we come back.